Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whenever you are listening to this. You will notice, probably, those of you that are observant, that I have different shirts on and different slides. That's because some of this I had recorded previously for another class. Some of the slides are the same, but some of the information is different. So you will need this NASW Code of Ethics when you are answering the Gloria case study questions that will ask you to describe and discuss two code of ethics that apply in the Gloria case study. So you may want to either take notes on this or re-listen to this particular section, so you will get this piece right in the Gloria case study. Okay. So I hope this is about week, I think, 10 in the semester. So I hope you're all doing well. And remember, if you ever have any questions or, please email me, call me. I really want you to succeed. If you've lasted this long, you're doing a great job. Okay. Thank you. So the National Association of the Code of Ethics was created in, I believe, sometime in the 1950s. However, it was revised. I think the newest version was January 2018. So the Code of Ethics is a current living document. Respect, responsibility, honesty, and caring are just some of the attributes that are important for the NASW Code of Ethics. However, it's a general way, and it's meant for clients we work with, any individuals we work with. It's meant for us, social workers, counselors. It's meant for our colleagues and the broader society. And basically, it lays some groundwork about how should we be interacting with each other. How should we act with one another? And so this is just kind of a neat little kind of a wordle that I liked putting together. So again, because we all have different, we might have the same values, but how do we put those values into action? So the code is very specific about how do we put those values into action. So this is the mission statement of the NASW Code of Ethics. Every single Code of Ethics has a mission statement, in particular to the profession. So this one says the mission is to enhance well-being and help meet the basic human needs of all people, with particular attention to the needs and empowerment of people who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. Okay, now this does not mean we ignore people who are rich, or any other groups of people. But what it means is we are recognizing that certain individuals like that need certain help. So we are, kind of concentrating on that. But, everybody needs, empowerment. But people who are vulnerable, oppressed, or living in poverty, need a little help up. Just like the government, hopefully, is going to come through on the promise of giving each person with a certain income a certain amount of money and extending benefits and all kinds of helps, because many of us will need certain kind of help during this time. So examining ethical theories, and this is something general. This can apply to many different theories. So when we examine ethical theories, the first question is, where does the theory turn for validation of its purposes? So the answer to that is the National Association of Social Workers. They are the ones who got together and created this and recreated them. The next one is distributive question. Whose interest does the theory address? So think about if you were working with, you were a caseworker, you're working with a foster care family, you were working with the biological family and the children. Whose interest would you address? Whose interest would you mostly focus on? Think about that for a minute. I often have students answer children, and many times the reason people give me that answer is because children are vulnerable. Yes, they are, but but in reality, the code says you need to focus on everybody's particular interest, okay? And, making that relevant to your service learning project, I had to focus on your interests. What would you like to do? I had to focus on the interest of the college because we had to do it within a certain guidelines of the college. And then I had to focus on, what do I think agencies was realistic out there with particular agencies. So I had to address, when designing these projects, I had to address all the different constituents. And then the last one is substantive questions. What goals or actions are desirable ends within this particular theory? So the code breaks it up into different sections, and it's very specific which, what are the actions. Again, we want everybody to be protected within this particular code. So what does best practice have to do with our profession's code of ethics anyway? So that just means that, again, the code keeps being revised to incorporate best practices for today's world. For example, there's a lot of electronic record keeping, okay? It's not just as simple as typing something into the computer. Who gets access to it? How do we store these particular records, okay? If you think about organ donations, how do we decide ethically who gets those organ donations, okay? To kind of bring it up to today, you've heard a lot of talk about ventilators. Hopefully we will have enough across the United States. If we don't, how do we prioritize who gets the ventilator and who doesn't? Again, hospitals have ethicists, and it's based on, again, hospital ethics, and they would probably bring in the social worker too, and they would decide, what happens in these particular situations. So again, reinventing ethics, all right? And that's why I have my license, and I have to keep current. Every 3 years, I have a license renewal to pay a fee, of course. But also, I have to take 36 units of continuing education credit. So they're usually, for every 3 hours of, it's kind of like a workshop type thing. So I try to take ones that will keep me relevant and that also will, help with, in teaching my classes. So again, the code of ethics are made for a variety of people, okay? So it's everybody, all different kinds of ages. And so we look at, some of the general core values. Again, none of us could argue with these, but again, the code kind of directs us to how should we operationalize these different values. So service, social justice, dignity and worth of each person, importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. So the NASW has 6 broad purposes. Number 1, identify core values on which social work's mission is based. And we looked at some of those, and there's some more. Summarizes broad ethical principles and establishes a set of ethical guidelines to help social workers identify relevant considerations when professional obligations conflict or ethical uncertainties arise. So in other words, it's a roadmap, it's a GPS, so that we all kind of follow what we're supposed to be following. And another word is provides ethical standards to which the general public can hold the social work profession accountable. So in other words, as a social worker, you have a responsibility to the public, the same way doctors and nurses, etc. do. 5, socializes practitioners new to the field, and also those of us who have been in the field a while, so we keep up with the current practices. And 6, articulate standards that the social work profession itself can use to address whether social workers have engaged in unethical conduct. So once you have your license, as I do through New York State, one can be brought up on charges, and there's a whole board that looks at these charges if we do not follow, or if we if we do not follow some ethical guidelines. So these aren't just something a little thing in a book that you're going to, keep here in class. These are actually living documents. And when you go to those of you that are going to take the human services field class and even the chemical dependency class, I have my human services students sign off on the NASW Code of Ethics. Okay. So, that you'd have to adhere to in the agency. And sometimes agencies have their own code of ethics. When I worked at the YWCA of Northeastern New York, I helped write some of those ethics. And, so those are general ethics. And sometimes they are tailored to fit a particular agency. So I'm going to explain just a couple of the National Association Social Workers Code of Ethics. Please only use these when you are answering the Gloria case study questions, because you really won't understand fully the other ones. You may see the other ones if you download the longer version of the NASW Code of Ethics. So please stick to these when you're answering the Gloria case study question. So the first one is called commitment to client. These words are taken exactly from the NASW Code of Ethics. Social workers' primary responsibility is to promote the well-being of clients. However, social workers' responsibility to the larger or specific legal obligations may, on limited occasions, supersede the loyalty owed clients, and clients should be so advised. So you are going to describe and discuss, if you were the social worker for Gloria, how would you demonstrate that you were committed to her? Okay, so think about how, if you've been to counseling or in your relationships with people, how they show they are committed to you. So things like, being on time with her. Things like maybe learning a little bit about her situation. Knowing how to interact with somebody who has children, okay? Things like that. Anything you could think of. How would you show, you're going to describe and discuss how you would show that you are committed to Gloria in this case, and to helping her achieve a better life for herself and for her children. The next code that we're going to discuss is self-determination. So again, the quote is, social workers respect and promote the right of clients to self-determination and assist clients in their efforts to identify and clarify their goals. So in brief, what that means is we never just sit down with the client and tell them what they should be doing, or even in the beginning to offer advice. What we have to do is lead them through a process so that the client can determine what are their goals for themselves and how do they achieve those. So one way is, asking open-ended questions. So if you choose this one for the Gloria case study and you say, I'm going to ask her some open-ended questions, please give me some examples of open-ended questions, okay? You might say something like her, well, why don't you do some research on a particular topic, and then you have to name the topics for me, and then come back next week and let's discuss what you found out. Okay, so research might be, what services are there in the community? It might be, where would you like your children to go to childcare? Do some research on that, and then come back and let's discuss the location, the cost, etc. So anything that will assist the client in figuring out what they need and clarifying their own goals. So the next one is informed consent. This again is an exact quote from NASW, National Association of Social Workers. So social workers should use clear and understandable language to inform clients of the purpose of the services, risks related to the services, relevant costs, client's right to refuse or withdraw consent, and the time frame covered by the consent. So what does this mean exactly? Some examples. Understandable language. So look at the audience you are working with. What is the age of the audience? Are you working with adults, teens, children, middle school, etc.? Who are you working with in terms of language skills? What is their first language? Are you working with people who have physical and mental challenges? Okay. Will the service cost something? Okay. Is it covered by insurance? How many visits are they allowed because of the insurance or because of the agency? Okay. Will you have to consult with an outside agency like a psychologist or a psychiatrist? If you do, there's forms they have to sign. And clients can refuse to sign the forms, and you wouldn't be able to speak to a third party. Okay. And what is the time frame covered by the consent? Is it the whole time they were there? So in other words, anything that will assist in making the client successful. Okay, so that is informed consent. So when you are looking at the Gloria case study, you say, what will assist Gloria in being able to accomplish her goals? What do I need to tell her? Okay, one big one is all social workers are mandated reporters. So mandated reporter means you are mandated by law to report suspected child abuse or neglect. So you need to tell the client that up front so that they will not reveal something to you that maybe they don't want to, and then all of a sudden you need to make a CPS call, and they're really angry at you because they didn't know this. Okay, so that is key. Any counselor or social worker, psychologist are mandated reporters, which means when you are in your particular job, employment, you are mandated by law to report suspected child abuse or neglect. And the last code of ethics we will be talking about is competence. So I quote, social workers should provide services and represent themselves as competent only within the boundaries of their education, training, license, certification, consultation received, supervised experience, or other relevant professional experience. In other words, you should only work with clients that you have some knowledge of, okay? For example, I have worked personally with clients who have experienced domestic violence and other, issues. I have not worked with clients who have been sexually abused. That is out of my realm of knowledge and experience. So I would have to, pass that client on to somebody who was more knowledgeable. Now, if you have a client that you think you can, learn the material, by reading or a couple workshops or, things like that, you certainly can do it. But you have to be very careful because you are really in a position of power with the client, being able to, because you are a professional, being able to help them change their lives. So you really, really have to know what you are doing. So if you use this one for the Gloria case study, just say to yourself, what do I need to know in working with Gloria? Okay, so you don't have to say right now what skills you have because, some of you, if you don't have experience, probably don't have that many. But you can discuss what skills you will have. And remember, please make it long enough, okay? Please, discuss and describe and make the Gloria case study long enough, all right? So competence.